Welcome to the Dialogue KE. Now, tonight, religious leaders, the NCSC, as well as the international community, are calling for a dialogue between the government and the opposition to end the protest in the country. The main question is who will bend first? Can this be achieved in the current political climate? You can join in on the conversation at HopeTV_KE on Twitter. The hashtag, as always, is the Dialogue KE. Now in studio, I'm joined by two political analysts, that is Eric Mukono and Esther Nyonje. Karibuni sana.
Asante Ken.
Now, last week, Azimio staged a 3-day anti-government demonstrations across the country. That is from Wednesday all the way to Friday. Well, Esther, do you think the opposition achieved what they wanted?
Thank you for having me tonight.
Karibu.
On the question of whether Azimio achieved what they wanted or not does not have a direct answer, yes or no, if we lost lives on that day, when lives were interrupted, children did not go to school, and we had a delay in the syllabus. We lost investors. So when you look at the ripple effect of the Azimio demonstrations on the third day, you cannot point it out to whether they achieved what they wanted or not, because at the end of the day, the loss is on the Kenyan economy and the Kenyan lives and the ordinary people of Kenya.
So Kenyans actually lost?
Kenyans lost.
So Eric, do you think Azimio achieved what they wanted last week?
Kennedy, I would want to first get Azimio out of this. Last week on Friday, you ran a very interesting story in Kibra. It's a story that I followed very closely. And one of the guys you interviewed in that time when you were in Kibra said this whole thing has nothing to do with Raila Odinga. It has nothing to do with Azimio. So I would say that the Kenyan people, to some extent, achieved what they wanted. Even after being cowed down, even after being threatened, still there is hope at the end of the tunnel.
So Kenyans achieved?
Kenyans did achieve.
How about Azimio?
Well,
Azimio
is just a platform to which Kenyans are going to build up to their demands on the government and what they feel they are agitated about. So really, it's not going to be so much about Azimio. It's more on what exactly the Kenyan people are agitating for.
Yeah. So Esther, last week in the demonstrations, the Kenyans were actually in the front line. We never saw the Azimio principles. Why do you think that was so?
Kenyans were on the front line because, yes, the people who want to go and demonstrate, and they don't feel well represented by the representatives that they elected to represent them in parliament or in the legal spaces. So they went to demonstrate by themselves, but who calls for the demonstrations? It's a coalition. Mm-hmm. If Eric Omondi goes to demonstrate, Kenyans would not rally behind him. And on the second, he will be arrested. So it is not that Kenyans are taking themselves to demonstrate. We saw police arrest people who were barely holding placards. You hold a placard, you are arrested. We've seen a very vocal activist. I just skipped his name, but he's becoming more and more vocal. He goes on the day when the budget was being announced. He was outside the treasury holding placards saying, "Reduce the cost of living." That's a demonstrator, but he was arrested. But now, when it is a coalition which is being led by a leader that has a structure and an organization, then it makes more sense. And when he says that something was achieved, nothing was achieved because the price of fuel is still high. Yes, I can make a comparison to Myanmar in Asia. They demonstrated for quite a while because the prices of fuel were high and the subsidies were removed. They demonstrated, and at the end of the demonstrations, the fuel prices were brought down and the subsidies were returned. So we're still facing the same problems yesterday and today. There is no difference. instead, we have negative effects and nothing has changed. If something positive had happened, if something positive had come out from the demonstrations, then we would have said then, yes, we achieved something. But now when Kenyans go to demonstrate by themselves, it does not capture government attention for it to do what the Kenyans want to do. Instead, they're arrested, that they're taken in.
Kennedy, you see these Kenya Kwanza people like Esther.
I am
You've-
not a Kenya
you've
Kwanza.
actually
Who said
branded
I'm a
her
Kenya
Kenya
Kwanza?
Kwanza. You're a Kenya
He has
Kwanza.
branded me. I'm not Kenya Kwanza.
They're actually very ignorant because from what she has said, she knows what exactly Kenyans are agitated about. She knows exactly that Kenyans are protesting against the cost of fuel. She knows that Kenyans are protesting against the cost of food. She sits in very high end with very high end people in this government, but still she cannot help them think that Kenyans are in the lower bracket where they call them hustlers. That these people need help in terms of the cost of living. So this is just an ignorant person.
You cannot say it's ignorance because when you protest about the high cost of living, you see Kenyans are suffering. But now, do the demonstrations help? And the demonstrations came way exactly
But you see, Esther,
after when the president was sworn in. He was sworn in, and just the next day, people are in the streets. They went to the Supreme Court. Everything was delayed. The permanent secretary positions, they went to court also. So everything was like the government started functioning. I can even tell you there was no settling down of the government.
but you see,
It did not even settle down. So how can you work in such an environment if you want to address the cost of living?
let me just ask you a quick question. In the very first days, we saw anti-government protests, and the Azimio Brigade was very vocal about the things they want. And one of the things they were very vocal about was on the Chirela 4. The other thing was on the servers, and all those things around the elections. But recently, we've not heard them talk about anything to do with elections. Actually, Kennedy has raised a very interesting question, that the principals were no show in last week's protest. And it is because you people wanted to arrest them, and Moses Kuria made it very
Do
clear
not
that...
use you people.
Okay,
but they have
Eric,
no
let's
power. They have no
make
power
it
to
clear.
arrest
You have a right
anyone.
of reply. Are you part of the Kenya Kwanza brigade?
I am not part of the Kenya Kwanza Brigade.
Oh, okay, thank you so much. So,
I'm
Eric,
a political
to
analyst.
come
I
in
look
here.
at it and I dissect it in the way it's supposed to be dissected. If it is something to bring attention to, then bring attention to it.
But I need also to also let her know that the protests that are currently staged by Azimio have nothing to do with the elections.
Okay.
That is why you didn't even without having the
But
principals
they
around,
say
you
they
still had people coming up and protesting and
Okay,
saying
let's
that we need these issues tackled.
Okay, let's move away from last week's demonstrations. Actually, last week, on Saturday, Azimio downsized the protest. It's now on Wednesdays, but actually today, Azimio issued a statement this evening saying that they will not take part in the protest, but instead will take to the streets. They will hold solidarity parades and vigil for victims of police brutality in various locations in all parts of the country. Why do you think Azimio have actually downsized the demonstrations from 3 days to 1 day?
Well, I wouldn't know because I'm not an organizer. I don't take part in their organizations. But now, looking at the demonstrations, as he has said, you are bringing out a question that you should have asked yourself. When the demonstrations started, they started with a different purpose. And then over time, it's now gaining different reasons. So I'm sure if we are going to have demonstrations by next month, we are going to have a different reason for a demonstration. Because we started with Cherera 4, we started with high cost of living, involvement in government, what else? Fuel and what? And now,
It
now...
is because we can't have hungry people fighting for democracy. So when we have people full, now we can have people come and fight for their rights.
And now,
all that.
now, it is purely on the cost of living. And now, how can you deal with the cost of living with the demonstrations on the streets? Why don't you it's more reasonable to give government some time, and then after the time, now come and say that you did not fulfill what you wanted to say. Because you have to realize that as much as the president was out there saying in 100 days I will do this, we have to be smart enough to know that campaign language is different from administration when he's in that seat. And we also have to realize that he was also inheriting something from someone, the continuity, the administration continuity. So he couldn't implement everything that he could. And there were so many disruptions also. He couldn't implement everything that he could in that time. So if it would be more reasonable if we were having these demonstrations next year, but not 10 months down the line.
Next year. Eric,
Yes.
do you agree with Esther that we should have the demonstrations next year?
No, no,
in
no,
the government time?
no. I don't. I think I don't agree with her, because she has raised a very seemingly valid point about the inheritance of the government, you know, and interestingly, these people. She asked me not to call them these people. Let me just call them Kenya Kwanza. Kenya Kwanza came in and told us that, see, we have inherited a very dilapidated government. And for us to get us to a point of bringing this country to where we want it economically, then we need to raise taxes and do all those things that you have seen done in the last few months, now headed to a year, when this government has been in power. But then I keep asking myself, who is the fool here? Is it the Kenyan people, or is it the government? Or who is making a fool of the other? Because days later, we get to see a government that somehow has acquired money, and from the dilapidated government that they inherited, now they have money to employ 50 CASs. Okay? They come and tell us, we want to cut down on the public expenditure. Okay? Using what they call something measures, austerity measures, you know? And they said that using these austerity measures, we would want to raise 300, is it 300 billion or 300 million, around that. But then still, we see these guys moving around with very high-end cars, in very huge motorcades, you know? I mean, we need to have a government that is responsible. Now, David Ndii, in one of the interviews, sometimes should be in April, told us that government is extremely wasteful, you know? And this was simply after the president came and told us, now, for us to cut down on our public expenditure, we need to do a few things. And then the economic advisor to the president comes and tells us that the direction that we are headed to as a nation, the government is extremely wasteful. Now, instead of us putting all these taxes on Kenyans and having all these punitive taxes on Kenyans, why don't we use why don't we use the resources that we have? Why don't we manage the resources that we have well, so that we don't have to inflict the pain on the same person that this government told us that we want to defend, the hustler nation, you know? Why don't we at least cut down on our public expenditure? Why don't we bring down the wage bill? And then we'll have money at least to service the loans that they're claiming they are servicing. We'll have money to do a bit of production and lower the cost of living. I mean, this government has a lot of money. Let no one lie to you that they inherited a dilapidated government. There is no way those guys inherited a dilapidated government. There is money in this government.
Back to the Azimio demonstrations. And actually, the police have been on the spotlight on how they've been handling protesters in the series of the anti-government protests. And actually, Azimio coalition actually collecting evidence to file a case at the International Criminal Court. Esther, do you think this is the way to go, the ICC?
we've seen ICC before. It is not a new topic in Kenya. We've seen ICC before. And what I say is that let us not get to that point. I mean, whatever is happening, what are we even portraying to the international community? We have our court system in Kenya. We can form our tribunals by ourselves. So why do we have to get to a point where the international community is again coming to get involved in our issues here as a country? So it is something that is repeating itself, and it's a sad state because what's happening can be easily solved by calling these two principles together to sit down and digging into the issues that are affecting us, knowing that our issues are affected by electoral injustices. We had the Kriegler report. Johan Kriegler was a South African, was he a Chief Justice? He had to come, form a commission, wrote a whole commission, wrote a whole report to review the electoral reforms. It has not even been implemented. So now why are we going back to the ICC? Call someone again to negotiate it. I mean, we don't have to get there. I feel the two principles, Raila Odinga and William Ruto were two equal competitors in the 2022 general elections. Because honestly, we are here because of the elections. And that is the problem with our country, Kenya. We are always, after every elections, we face the same problems. So we just need to note down the specific problem that we are facing. What is it? Electoral reforms. Let us not put so many issues under the carpet. Find something to ease the pain at that point. And then when we are faced again, the same disease crops up. So let us find tangible solutions to our own problems rather than even involving international community or involving outsiders. We can solve our own problems. We're an independent country and we have our own jurisdiction and constitution.
Well, we've seen Interior CS time and again issue warning to the Azimio Brigade every time they're about to hold a protest. And actually today was no difference. He actually issued the same warning to Azimio, but however, Azimio have actually called off the protest on Wednesday. I want us to just listening to what the Interior CS Kennedy Kimani had to say regarding the Wednesday protests.
Hakuna tofauti. Wanatatiza watu kule Nairobi. Ati sijui ni maandamano. Maandamano ni kupiga polisi na mawe, kuvunja duka, kuchoma barabara na kutatiza uchukuzi wa umma. I want to make it very clear that all people who are hiding behind politics to commit crime have a date with us and have a date with law enforcement officers. We are not suffocating any freedoms in this country, and that's why we will remain firm. I hear they have again threatened that they will want to go out on a looting spree on Wednesday. We are ready for them. We will deploy from 1 a.m. We will make sure that no hooligan, no criminal, no looter gets his way.
That's the CS Interior right there, Kennedy Kimani. I mean, Eric, we've seen time and again him issue the same kind of warning to the Azimio. Your take on this?
Let me not call it a warning. Let me call it a threat. Because Article 37 of the Constitution gives every Kenyan the right to demonstrate, the right to picket, and Kenyans are entitled to security when they are doing all these. So I don't think it's a good direction that we are taking, where we limit the rights enshrined in the Constitution.
Yeah.
So I think let Kenyans be given the opportunity that they need. Now that the government has refused to listen to its people, then let them allow us to do the least that we are able to do. And that is demonstrate and let the government know that we are not comfortable about certain things that they are doing. And you see, these people are just hiding, under the political notion that Azimio is protesting to agitate for political, for their political positions or something. But they need to come and address the root cause of the issue. They need to identify what exactly is the root cause of the issue. If they think that elections and all that is the cause of the demonstrations that we are in and not the cost of living, then if that is true, then let them work on the cost of living, give Kenyans make the lives of Kenyans affordable, and see whether these protests will continue. If they will continue, then they can handle the rest. Because as far as I know, and as far as I'm concerned, the only thing that Kenyans want as of now is make life bearable for the Kenyan people.
Make life bearable for the Kenyan people.
Exactly.
Well, in the midst of all these protests, we've actually seen political arrests at the likes of Babu Owino, Ken Chonga, the Member of Parliament of Kilifi South, the ex-Mungiki leader, Maina Njenga, and actually we've seen Pauline Njoroge, the blogger, today, who was actually, the accusations on the drugs were actually dropped today. We have actually also seen the saga with the Kenyatta family, with their sons and the former First Lady, Mama Ngina Kenyatta. Do you think this is political revenge from what happened to the UDA brigade last year?
Well, the way politics is being played out in this country, you can clearly see it is political revenge. But now they want to put it in another way. But they want to say that this is what they did. This is what they did, because if you look at the arrests of people who are being arrested right now are the people who are affiliated to the Azimio brigade. Yeah. And like you have said that Article 37, Kenyans should practice Article 37 of the Constitution, which gives you the right to picket and demonstrate. Yes, it is operationalized by the Public Order Act that gives a good structure. It gives a clear structure of how demonstrations should be carried out in this country. If demonstrations are going to be a threat to, it poses a threat to national security, if it poses a threat to public health, if it infringes the rights of other people, then it's no longer unlawful. And that is how we've seen those demonstrations are, because someone can be wanting to bring maybe their sick mother from the village to Nairobi, and they can't because the demonstrations that are interrupting cannot enable them to get to Nairobi. So if in that case, then a government has to step up and play its role. Yes. So this arrest that we see, the arrest for the people who are being arrested, if it's true that they are behind the threat of the national security, they are posing a threat to. There was a video that was saying that some of them were paying people to go demonstrate to the streets, and they say it's what video. So let them be taken to court, let them be arraigned, let them be released if they have no case. If they have a case to answer, let them answer the case. But if we want to say it's a political, yes, it could be political, because also politics is being played out. In the other regime, we saw the Secretary General of UDA being carried from Kitengela in his house to somewhere in Western Province. Yes, you see, because he was with the other team. But now this time we see he's now safe. No one can touch him. So, you know, we want to say that, yes, this is what they're doing, but now that is how politics is being played out. So if there is the revenge issue with Uhuru Kenyatta, when Uhuru was president, you even saw Ruto saying, don't come for my children. So it's as much as we are talking about demonstrations and what, there's also the game of politics that is being played. And I can confidently say that, yes, there's a revenge game being played there also.
Okay. So in the interest of time, Eric, what do you think Because the religious leaders, the NCAC, the National Cohesion Integration Commission, and actually also the international community are all calling for dialogue between the two main people, that is the President, William Ruto, and the opposition leader, Raila Odinga. What do you think, in your own perspective, will be the right way to resolve this stalemate? Because you've seen the handshake being politicized, but both sides saying that they do not want a handshake. What do you think is the right way?
I think I don't think where we are is the right direction we are taking. Kenyans and the representatives of the people must be given the right to defend themselves and defend the people they represent. I looked at, just to weigh in on what Esther has said, before I come to what I think. I saw the charge sheet of Pauline Njoroge today in Malindi Court. And it was very interesting. In the first place, you were told it was something to do with drugs and narcotics. And then somehow it changes to whatever she wrote on her Twitter account and about the Subarus that went with Sudanese registration number. I mean, we can't be that petty, you know? And back to what you asked on what I think and the direction we should take. I think I have insisted, and I have said it before, that we need dialogue. And not a handshake. We need dialogue. We need both parties to calm down, you know, for the interest of the Kenyans and for the interest of the people. To calm down and have a conversation on how we are going to make our nation better. Because this is our nation. We have nowhere else to go, you know. Let's have a conversation on how we are going to make life bearable for the common mwananchi. Let's have a conversation on how we are going to make the life of investors around this nation easier, so that we have more people employed and we have an easier environment of doing business. And that is the only way that we can grow our economy. Because if we have a peaceful country, then we attract investors. Right now, the deputy president is in Italy. And when you look, when he's out there looking for investors and they see what is happening in the country, then no one is going to be willing to come in here. But then the same deputy president keeps saying that atutaki mutu, you know. I mean, we need to have a sober conversation on how we are going to make and better the lives of Kenyans, and how we are going to make both the political environment and the business environment in this country better.
Esther, Eric has talked about dialogue. We've seen the bipartisan talks. They have actually failed from what you've seen. I mean, what is the other alternative?
Sober is actually the word. I liked when he said sober.
Yeah.
Now, the other alternative, like I said at the beginning, that Raila Odinga and Honorable William Ruto were two equal competitors in the elections. And one had to win and the other had to lose. We cannot all be in power. So when William Ruto won the election and was accorded the honor of presidency, and he was president of this country, that has to be respected. Now let us move on from there. How do we move on from there? That Raila Odinga should accept that Ruto is president. Don't call the government illegitimate, and you want to get also services from the same government. So as he says, dialogue is the way. Let dialogue be the way. Let us find a way on how. Let us even go back and try to look at how do we handle failures from elections. Let us solve that. Let us keep that. Let us write reports about that so that it is written and see if someone is agitated at presidential level, how are we handling him? So that we don't see, like I said, let's not put issues under the carpet, give it a pain reliever, and then at a later time, it comes out again. So dialogue is the way, and the bipartisan talks failed. And when we're talking about dialogue, it does not mean that we are going to agree on the first instance. Dialogue is a continuous process. dialogue does not take place once or twice because it's a continuity. Our system is evolving. We might need dialogue 10 years from now. So let us not stop dialoguing, and everyone needs to calm down. You see, William Ruto is the president of this country. He needs to accept that. You know, the way he's behaving right now, it's like he has not even believed that he's the president. He's still looking back to see whoever he left behind. No, he should drive the country forward. If I can make a comparison, the Prime Minister of UK, he also found a dilapidated economy, but he didn't go back to say, oh, I'm blaming this person, I'm blaming this person. He took it from there and steered it on. So whatever the Kenya Kwanza team is even doing is not even fair, because why are they bothered with Raila Odinga? Stop mentioning Raila Odinga in rallies. Stop mentioning Raila Odinga. Stop going to places and say Raila Odinga should do this, should not do this. We are sons of Mau Mau, chest stamping. Focus on the work that is before you. Drive the Kenyan economy forward. Do your work. Let these demonstrators demonstrate, because they have the rights. Let them demonstrate. Don't use force. And then calm down. Both of them should calm down. This chest stamping is what I have an issue with, because I feel like the government should take its place in governing the country and not being involved with politics and the affairs of the opposition. They have the numbers in parliament. They're passing the finance bill. They do whatever they want to do. So if the opposition is agitated, then they should find a way on how to work with the opposition. So the way forward after the bipartisan talks, when they failed, then here we need these two people, the two main perpetrators, to meet, because they're the core principles of all this. Let them meet, let them sit down and give way forward to us. William Ruto is the bigger brother here. He needs to handle Raila Odinga in a magnanimous way. And he has to realize that Raila Odinga lost the election with a very narrow margin. So he's also holding a better part of the country. And people are still feeling the pains of the election loss. You don't become so rude. You don't become insensitive to these people, because you are the president of this country and you are the symbol of national unity. What do? Calm down and say, my brother, I'm here. Let them sit in a room. Let them say, my brother, I'm here. I am the president of this country. You can make a phone call to the president and he can agree to meet you. He can agree to meet me. He can agree to meet you too. Why doesn't he reach out to Raila Odinga and say, my brother, come, we talk? We're not talking about power sharing, but how are we going to move forward? Don't you think that's a good idea?
Actually, Kennedy, just before, she raised a very valid point on elections. And I wonder, or I just think to myself, is this the point where we revive the Building Bridges initiative? Because it had quite a very interesting thing and very important ways on how to deal with some of these elections.
It's a valid question.
Some very these election.
So revive the BBI.
I think it's a good point for
or
us.
other reports. If we have to have constitutional amendments, let us have the constitutional amendments. Let us just find tangible solutions. If the winner-take-it-all system is the problem, then the BBI had a proposal to handle the winner-take-it-all system. If that is going to solve the problem for future generations and not a handshake government to people say we want to give Raila something so that he can keep quiet. No, let us find, if we have to amend the constitution, if we have to amend sections of the constitution, if we have to get reports to solve the problems, then let us do it.
Amazing remarks from you guys. I hope the president and the opposition leader are actually watching. As we conclude, maybe Eric,
yes,
what would be your advice to both sides of the divide?
My advice is simple. Let's have a conversation. Let's have a national conversation that involves both sides, both the president and his brigade in Kenya Kwanza. Let's have a conversation with the Azimio brigade, and as well involve Kenyans. Let's listen to Kenyans. What do they want? You know, that is the only way we are going to deal with some of the things we are seeing in Kenya. So my advice would be, let's have a sober conversation.
Let's have a sober conversation. Esther, as we conclude, your advice to both sides of the divide?
My advice to both, it will sound like a repetition, but a repetition for emphasis, yes? In this situation, like I said, before, on that day that William Ruto reached out to Raila Odinga, he quoted Winston Churchill and he said that at this point, it is not a time to look at who is right or who is wrong. So when he reached out when he extended that olive branch, we were so happy. That's the same thing he should do. And he should not give up. If the bipartisan talks failed, let us find another solution. So my word of the advice to the president is that he should really calm down and know that he's the bigger brother here. No one is contesting his presidency. He's the bigger brother. So how is he going to handle this situation? And remember, these people are I don't want to say weaklings, but these people are the, should I say distractors? No. But he should be the bigger brother.
The bigger brother.
Reach out to the other core principal and talk to him and tell him and ask him, now what, I'm listening to you. Give him a listening ear. And let us move on from there. If it doesn't work, let's keep on doing it and doing it again and again and again. But let us not get to a point where we are heading to a failed state. We are heading to where we were at 2007. It will be a sad state. And this can be solved just by the president reaching out to Raila Odinga. But we are not talking about power sharing.
Exactly.
We can have a conversation without talking about power sharing. And we can make so many recommendations. We can do so many things without power sharing. But let us have that conversation.
All right, that's a very good point to end this debate, this discussion, this dialogue. The president should act as a bigger brother, because no one is actually contesting his presidency, as Esther said. Thank you so much, Esther and Eric, for your time. They have been our political analysts for the Dialogue KE tonight, and many thanks to you for your time. We really appreciate the privilege of your time, and on behalf of the whole team that made this broadcast a success, have yourselves a blessed night. My name is Kennedy Kimani, and Fiona Wallace has been the sign language interpreter.